Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like what you see, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it with friends, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thank you. I recently did a video on this knife. This is an L-46 by Western. It's also a Boy Scouts of America fixed blade. This is one that I traded with BDH for, and I still think I got the better end of the deal, but BDH was also very happy with what he got. So I guess it's one of those mutual trades that worked out real well. In any case, I've already done a video on this knife. I'll link it in the description below. But the reason BDH knew I would have been interested in this is because I've mentioned on a couple occasions that I've always been looking for a Boy Scouts of America fixed blade knife that I could afford. They're usually in either really crappy shape and overpriced, or in really good shape and at a price that I just can't afford. Well, lo and behold, very recently, soon after I received this knife, one of my saved searches in eBay popped up and said, here's a Boy Scout fixed blade knife. Are you interested? And it was kind of strange. It never fails. Once you've got one, another one soon follows. And yeah, the price was right, the condition was right, and so I snapped it up right away. And so that's what this video is going to be about. My second Boy Scouts of America fixed blade, also a knife made by Western. Okay, and this is just an Ulster Boy Scouts of America camp knife. I've got it out here for a size comparison in a little bit. So now the first knife I had was an L-66. This one is an L-48. The L in the name refers to the leather handle. So it's their number 48 knife with a leather handle. And this one's a little smaller than the other one, and it's often referred to as a bird and trout knife or a small hunter. The other one is usually just referred to as a hunter. In any case, here we have the knife, and you can see why it's, anyone who's familiar with bird and trout knives knows, well, yeah, that's what a bird and trout knife usually looks like. And it's a pretty cool little knife. Overall length of this knife comes in right at maybe 7 5/8 of an inch, and it has a about a 4-inch blade. I have a feeling originally as a 4-inch blade, but it looks like it's been rounded a little bit, so the tip has been reprofiled a little bit. For size comparison, if we can get these both out, here we have a little bit of a size comparison between the two. One has, the L-66 has a 4.5-inch blade compared to that 4-inch blade, and it's got a handle that is also about a 1/2 inch longer. So this handle is only about 3.5 inches. So a little small for the average person, but very typical of bird and trout knives. And just like the L-66, if you look at it, it looks like it's a full tang knife, but it's not really a full tang knife. In case you did not see the other video, let me explain how this handle is put together. Okay, the handle is actually a stacked leather handle, but instead of having the push tang run down the center, you actually have a tang that has been split, and so it's kind of like a tuning fork. Here's the blade area. You can see it on the knife here, where the blade is and everything. And then you have your crossguard be pushed up into here, followed by a couple washers, and then a series of stacked leather washers, all shaped like an H, and a couple more washers, all jammed in there. And while they're putting them on there, they're heavily epoxied and everything, so they're jammed in there with a bunch of epoxy and everything. And then once they're all in there nice and tight, they take and put the end cap on, and then attach it with 2 pins. So the end cap is held in place by 2 pins going through this tuning fork arrangement. And then once that's all done, all of the washers are sanded down and everything is sanded smooth, so you end up with a handle that looks like this. But rest assured, all of these washers are attached. They're just attached going through the center of the handle instead of being wrapped around one push tang going down the middle of all the washers. And it's kind of ingenious when you think about it, because you have these 2 tangs running on the outside, giving probably more support than a single push tang going down the middle. And you've got 2 pins holding the back on instead of just 1 pin. So the chances of this handle or the pommel getting loose are slimmer than if it just had 1 pin running through the center. So really, yeah, you kind of have to give them kudos for doing it that way. And you would think that the washers would start gapping and everything along the outside, along the tang. But this knife is going on 50, 60 years old and not happening. And not a lot of shrinkage or anything going on either. So it's really quite an ingenious way that they did this. And if you notice here, you've got, you got the brass crossguard, and then you got a couple plastic spacers, followed by a brass spacer, 2 red plastic spacers, a brass spacer, and 2 more plastic spacers, and then all the leather washers, and then the same thing going in the back before you get to the aluminum pommel. And the reason they use these plastic spacers is so that when the handle expands and contracts from heat and moisture and everything else, it's less likely to start cracking and gapping. So you do see a little bit of a gap there, and that's from from weathering over the years. I could probably fill that with some epoxy to improve it. But in any case, that's the way the handle was put together. Now, this particular model is known as the, according to the book 600 Scout Knives, that's the only source I have on these. The author lists this as the WES 08BS, so the Western number 8 Boy Scout knife. Now, anyone who collects Western knives knows that this is the pattern 48, the L-48, because of the leather handle. What you see here is the tang stamp for the knife. This one says Western, Boulder, Colorado, made in USA. And there's also one that has, instead of 3 lines, it has 4 lines, with the 4th line, well, the 4 lines being Western, followed by cutlery, then Boulder, Colorado, made in USA. And those 2 tang stamps overlap. And these knives, according to this tang stamp and these markings, dates from around 1956 all the way up through 1970. Just for comparison, you see here the differences in the tang stamps. The other L-66 just has Official Boy Scouts of America, and then on the other side it says Made in USA, patented. Both of the knives were made by Western in any case. Now, what would be on this blade right here, if it were showing, would be a blade etching that would read Official Knife Boy Scouts of America, but it's obviously been worn off, and apparently they wear off very easily on the fixed blade knives. But that's the knife so far. Now, taking a look at the sheath, what you have is one thing. You have the Boy Scouts of America first class symbol on the snap of the sheath. And then you have a square knot on the top part of the leather sheath with the line running all the way down on this side, and then it kind of disappears along the way here. It might have run all the way down. It's kind of hard to tell. It looks like it might have just kind of wore out because of where it is located. It would have gotten a lot of rubbing going there, but you can kind of see it running all the way down there. You also notice that four rivets holding the sheath together, and also the backside here is double stitched. Notice you've got an extra piece going here to form the belt loop here. So the sheath is really a well-constructed sheath, and that's how this sheath was actually introduced by the Boy Scouts of America for this knife around 1956. Another way that we know when this knife came about, but we don't know really the end date for the knife. So the sheath and the knife match real well for a knife started in around 1956 and running through 1970. And if that's the case, then the blade here is a 1095 carbon steel blade, which was typical of the Western cutlery knives, and just really a cool little knife, a nice little bird and trout knife. As I said, I was going to show a few comparisons on this. Well, let's start with your standard Boy Scout knife. This is your typical camp knife, and you see once that's opened up, you got the handle about the same size, but you got a much shorter blade. Like I mentioned, I think I mentioned, blade here is 4 inches long. Knife is overall, what was it, 7.5 inches long, and this one overall, if you get it open up, is right around 6.25 or so, because you've got a 2.5-inch blade on there. So much bigger blade than you do with your little folder. And here's your what most people look at and say, yeah, there's your bird and trout knife. But there's 6.5 or 6.25 inch bird and trout knife with a 3-inch blade. Kind of looks puny to this, so you can see which one would probably be a much more functional Boy Scout or knife for around the camp and everything. And when you're thinking of a 12 or 13-year-old boy, the size of this handle would be probably pretty good for a 12 or 13-year-old young pup, as opposed to an older person, but or, as opposed to an adult. But that's also a plus to the size of this knife. But trust me, this is definitely a knife that you will find adults carrying and using, this size knife, because it's really a handy size knife. It's not too big, not too small, perfect for like throwing in the tackle box, and well, just a really cool knife. So any case, I'm beginning the ramble, but there you have it. Now I have two Boy Scouts of America knives. When about a month ago, I didn't have any fixed blade Boy Scouts of America knives, and both of these are by Western, so I'm pretty happy. These are the two main knives that were used from post-World War II for fixed blade knives for the Boy Scouts. The L-48 and the L-66. let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with the Pious. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up or that you know what. And also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.